Do you rent water purifiers to end customers? What do you tell your customers when they ask you what the difference is between a microfiltration system and a reverse osmosis system? There's a strategic answer to give, but before I give it to you, I want to remind you to click on the bell button below to receive notifications when every new video comes out, and also click on the subscribe button. Now let's move on. When the customer asks you, but for me, a simple microfiltration is enough, what do you say? Because this also happens, and if you work in the water treatment sector, you need to know one very important thing. Very often the customer hasn't yet understood the problem with the water they have at home, or in any case in their environment. And without this awareness, it will be much more difficult for him to understand which technology is best suited to his situation. So the first concept that you have to explain to your customers is that water is not the same everywhere. The first thing you have to make the customer understand is that water is not the same in all geographical areas. In particular, in cities, very often the water is harder than normal. This happens because tap water, to get into homes, passes through mineral-rich soil, and during its journey, it therefore dissolves salts such as calcium and magnesium, and consequently the water is water with a greater presence of lime scale. And that's why in homes, especially in urban context, it's much easier to find scale in kettles, lime scale on taps, shower heads that get clogged, or appliances that accumulate residue. And this is where the visual lever comes into play, because when you're in front of your customers, don't start right away talking about filters or technologies that are still strange to him. Start from what the customer sees every day. You can ask him a very simple question. You can even ask him, dear customer, in the shower head, do you ever find lime scale? Do you ever happen to find white spots? Or in the kettle, have you ever seen scale or white spots? Almost always, it depends, but the answer is yes. And it's here that you can use what's called the visual lever, because the customer has before their eyes the concrete proof that the water contains residual minerals that in one way or another then also end up in the water for cooking and in the water for drinking. So you can explain to him in a simple way that that lime scale, those white spots he sees, don't come from outside, okay? But they're inside the water. So it's the water that in a certain sense transports them, quote unquote. And when the water evaporates, the steam rises, but the lime scale, obviously being solid, stays put. At this point, the customer can understand much better what the problem is on a visual level. This explanation is much more powerful because the customer is no longer imagining something abstract, but is looking at real proof, and mostly inside his home, or in any case, in his environment. And this completely changes your conversation, or the conversation of your agents and consultants with him, because now the customer is no longer talking about a purifier in general, but is talking about his water. And here at this point is the perfect time to introduce your technologies. At this point, you can explain in a simple way that there are different filtration systems and that each one has a different function. For example, microfiltration is very useful for removing solid particles, sand, rust, or some impurities of this kind, of this caliber, and it is a very widespread technology precisely because it improves the quality of drinking water. But it's important to make the customer understand that not all filtration technologies do the same thing, because substances dissolved in the water, like mineral salts, are not always removed by all filtration systems. Okay? And here reverse osmosis comes into play, but only when needed, because reverse osmosis, which is the highest stage of filtration, is not always necessary. In fact, reverse osmosis is a more advanced technology that allows for the separation of many substances dissolved in the water, so it can certainly reduce all contaminants, but it also reduces mineral salts and nitrates. Obviously, it also reduces, if not completely stops, heavy metals and other dissolved substances that we'll talk about in other videos on reverse osmosis. But it's very important to make your customers understand one thing, that there is no single filtration technology that is the same for everyone. It always depends on the situation. It depends on the quality of the source water. So the incoming water, the area where they live, the needs your customer has, maybe they have specific needs, and their preferences, because tastes are also a selection criterion. So in some situations, microfiltration may be sufficient. In other situations, especially where the water is very hard or rich in dissolved substances, it may make sense to also consider a reverse osmosis system or possibly an ultrafiltration system. Now, what is your role as a professional? This is where the value of the professional comes in, because your job isn't simply to sell or rent a water purifier, sign the contract, and think about the next customer, and that's that. Your job is to analyze the situation and recommend the most suitable solution. Customers nowadays are looking for advice, they're looking for experts. And you must do this by always starting from three things: the water in the geographical area, what the customer sees at home, if it's possible to show them, and their needs or tastes. So in conclusion, always remember this, because when you talk to a customer, never start with the product, but start with the problem, where the problem in our context, operating in the water sector, is represented by the water. Start with what the customer sees or tastes every day, from limescale to build-up, specifically limescale in the shower and so on. You must use every piece of visual evidence to your advantage. Use the visual lever to help them understand what's in their water. Make the invisible in the water visible. I hope this phrase has inspired you, because when the customer truly understands exactly what is in their water, it becomes significantly easier to choose the right solutions for them, and you come across as a trusted consultant. I hope this video has helped you. The great thing is that many more are coming out with similar value, or even more value. But there are two types of people: those who see them first and those who see them last. Those who see them last are still ahead, and what do they need to do? Simply, they'll be the people who click the subscribe button below. They'll see them last, but they will see them, and they're already above average. But then there's a small percentage of people who always want to be ahead of everyone else. Those are the people who click the bell button so they get the notification before anyone else when a new video like this comes out, allowing them to apply new strategies for more success in the water treatment industry. See you in the next video.